everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to answer some of your questions that you've submitted thanks to my 3,000 subscribers celebration call for questions. You all have responded like tremendously. I have 6 pages, 3 pages, both sides, of questions that you all have asked, and they're fabulous questions. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who left a comment on that video, congratulating me on reaching the 3,000 subscriber milestone. I very much appreciate your support. I appreciate that you watch these videos and that you care about my life. So there are a lot of questions, so this is going to have to be dealt with over several videos. So I thought today there seems to be a lot of interest in my sort of career path, what I do for work, my educational background, that sort of thing. So I'm going to focus on those questions today, and then we'll just, I will film more videos in the future, and I will answer those questions as I can. So I am filming from a new location, not new totally, but a different location than I usually film. This is in my office, my home office, because I work mostly from home now when I'm doing office work. And this is the wall behind me when I sit at the computer. There's a navigational chart above my head, lots of family photos and postcards that folks have sent me that I've gotten to know through BookTube. And so this is a really a place where I feel, like very engaged with what I'm doing when I'm up here. So thought this would be a good location to film this video. So I have my reading glasses on so that I can read the questions here. So excuse the glasses. And so I'm just gonna name off the folks who asked in general about my work life and my career, because I think you're probably all asking about the same question. So Carla King and Roz from Scally Dandling about the books, Laura Corsi, excuse me, I added a C there. I Hear Books, Louise Render, and Majel the Surreal. You all asked questions about my educational background and my career. And so I will just get into it. So I guess you should know that I have always lived in Maine, and my dad was a career park ranger for a state park. And so my formative years, my young years, we lived in a ranger house on the park property. So I thought the park belonged to us. I thought that the park was my own personal yard and backyard. And so that was very formative for me to live in a place of great beauty. And my dad was always responsible for the conservation of this, this public place. And that was, that was very important to us. Dad was always teaching us about the forest, the different tree species, the different animals. My father's an avid outdoorsman, hunting and fishing and snowmobiling and all that stuff. So that was all part of my childhood and my background, and was very important to me as a child and as I grew up. And then I came of age. I was a teenager in the late 80s and graduated from high school in 1991. So as I was in my, my upperclassmen years in high school, there were a lot of environmental catastrophes that happened, particularly the Exxon Valdez oil spill, that were very, really triggered me, I guess you would say, to be very invested in environmental issues. Also at that time was the first Gulf War, and those the oil wells being on fire, and the pictures of, the smoke and discussions of what that was doing to the environment, to have those things be on fire. That was all very, I was in my teenage years of being very, impassioned about things that I cared about, and I was very much convinced that I needed to go to school and, get involved in environmental, fighting the good fight for the environment. I will say that even at a young age, I can remember being 5, 6, 7 years old and wanting to be a scientist. I'm not sure that I knew what a scientist was, but that is one of my earliest career. If somebody had asked me when I was that age what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would always say a scientist. I did transition from that to wanting to be a teacher for a while. My mom was an elementary school teacher. So, I had some I did also want to be a babysitter, I think, engineer. So, you know, I had some other career ideas when I was younger, but a scientist was definitely in the mix. And also when I was, you know, 17, 18 years old, I really was convinced that I did not want to live in Maine anymore. I wanted to move away. I wanted to go away to school. And I wanted to, when I left, I was accepted, went to college in Massachusetts at a college called Wheaton College. It's a private school. And I had a fantastic experience there, really good experience. It's a small school, and so the class sizes were very small. I had my faculty advisor was a young professor. He was just getting started in his own career, and he was a fantastic mentor to me, and really influenced where I ended up. But when I entered college, I was thinking I wanted to be an environmental lawyer. I wanted to like hold corporations to account. I wanted to make them stop polluting the environment. And I thought I would go to college, I would become a lawyer, and I would live in Boston, and I would like go into environmental law. That was my idea when I went to college. I quickly realized that I did not want to live in the city. I love Boston, but I don't want to live there. And I was so burnt out of school by the time I got to my senior year of college. There was no way I was going on to law school. And by that point, I had designed my own major in environmental conservation, and I had realized that my real love was that juxtaposition between conservation and use of a resource. So how do you utilize natural resources in a way that's sensible and logical and enables there to be resources into the future? That is that's the point where I feel like humans can really make a difference, because humans are not going to stop using natural resources, not at this late date. They may run out of natural resources, but I think that this idea that we're all going to go back to some pre-stage, some pre-industrialization stages is just not, that's just not how it's going to be, I don't think. So anyhow, I did my 4 years of college, and then I got married, and yeah, it was like, okay, what's going to happen now? I knew I did not want to, after college, I knew I did not want to be a lab scientist. I had done some things in the lab, and I don't hate lab work, but it wasn't a place that what I was really interested in was field work and working with people. So my first job in my career was actually working for an indigenous tribe here in Maine. I had moved away for a while, and was informed by my parents that this job was opening up back home where I was from. And I put my name in, and they took a chance on me as a very young person just out of college. And I worked for the tribal organization, the tribal government, for 3 years. And then I moved on and worked for a nonprofit organization in marine resource management, and did that for 15 years. And then for the last 10 years, I have worked in government as a fisheries manager type job. I work with nearshore marine resources, so anything in the intertidal, and I still am very much passionate about that balance of using a resource and conserving a resource. That juxtaposition is where I am interested in, like, trying to make a difference. And you know, in working in government management type job, it is not always easy, and it isn't always things don't always proceed as in a perfect world the way you would wish them to be. But I also feel like I love certain parts of my job that allow me to work with harvesters, and, you know, sort of being that link between upper management and the people who actually have to utilize the resource. I really enjoy that aspect of the work. I also am in, you know, do a lot of things that have to do with like permit review and things like that. So, you know, things that when you're young and idealistic, you don't, you know, that isn't the kind of thing that you think about. But that kind of work has to be done, and expertise has to be brought to bear on you know, development of shorelines and, you know, building projects and things like that, you know. So once you understand biological principles, you are asked to apply those in different ways. And so my job asked me to apply my knowledge of biology in many different ways. And I enjoy the fact that I'm not always doing the same thing. You know, each week it's something different. Each season it's something different. And my field work tends to be done in the warm weather months, because Maine is a state of, you know, with winter and a summer. So my job tends to be, when I'm doing field work, it tends to be from the spring to the fall, just because conditions are not optimal for you to be out like studying anything. And as I said, my field research is all done in the intertidal environment. So when I say intertidal, I mean that part of the ecosystem that is exposed when the tide goes out. So everything from the high tide on the upland side to the low tide at the, you know, lower end of where the tide recedes from, that is my area of interest. So that is what I'm focused on. So that's kind of a synopsis. And I don't, you know, it's not that it's any big secret what I do for work, but it's like just not something that I'm super comfortable like going into a lot of detail. And let me just make sure that I have answered everything. So I Hear Books asked me, did I plan to work in or about the ocean? No, I did not. So the interesting thing was, when I went to college, what I got really focused on and what I did my undergraduate thesis work in was studying the conservation of vernal pools. So vernal pools are those ephemeral pools that develop in the springtime with snowmelt and rainfall. They fill up depressions in the forest or in fields, and those pools, those vernal pools, are used by amphibians and other invertebrates for breeding purposes. So salamanders, frogs, fairy shrimp, and depending on where you are in the United States, different species use these particular kinds of habitat. And I was studying how states at the time, remember this was the early 90s, if regulations were just starting to be developed to protect these very important habitats. And I was involved in sort of doing a survey of what states in New England were doing to protect vernal pools or not. And in particular on my campus, working to certify a vernal pool that existed on the campus in order to get it protected, because there was some thought by the college that they would develop this particular area of the forest. So yeah, I was like out in the middle of the night. You know, I would drag my roommate out with me or some other friends out with me, like after midnight in the spring, to like check my pitfall traps or to like check to see if the salamanders were congressing. That's what it's called when salamanders get together in a vernal pool and mate. It's called a congress of salamanders. And so like I would always be out there in the rain, like after midnight with my flashlight and my rubber boots, and my friends would be like, really? Like, could you just pick a different thing to study? Like, why do you have to pick something that has to be studied in the middle of the night? But anyway, so I didn't plan to work necessarily with ocean issues, but I do, like, my heart does live in the ocean environment. It is, I love the upland as well, and I love all things having to do with, you know, the forest, but, you know, nothing makes me happier than being on the intertidal, the smell of the salt air, just the being out there is me being in my happy place. So yeah, I didn't necessarily plan on it, but I feel very blessed that I am actually doing that for my career at this point. Did I ever think, I Hear Books also asked, did you ever think of living somewhere other than Maine? Yes, I did. Like I said, after I graduated from college, I got married, and my husband and I, he was in the service, he was in the Army, and he was stationed in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so we moved there and lived there for a year after we got married. And we both really loved Colorado Springs because you have the mountains right there. It's very easy to, like, in a few minutes, you're out of the city and up in the mountains, and we would go camping and fishing, and we enjoyed that particular environment very much. But we knew that we wanted to start a family at some point, and we had no family in Colorado, and I could not see that 2 working parents could really have kids and not have a support system of their family. I mean, I know people do it, but it's super hard. And I was like, if we're going to have a family and we're going to have kids, then we got to move home where there's people that can help us do that. So that's what we did. I was able to get a job in my field, and yeah, so we decided to move home at that point. But we did consider living in Colorado. Let me make sure that I have answered all the work-related questions. Okay, this one. So Majel the Surreal asked, is my occupation the reason I like so many science books? Yes and no. I have always liked science books a lot, and I'll get into that with some of the other questions in another video. But it's really interesting that, like, I have definitely increased my science nonfiction reading over the last few years with starting Book Naturalist Book Club with Doris, and sort of leaning into my love of sciences has really driven me to pick up a lot more science than I used to do in terms of my overall reading. So yeah, it's partially because of my work, but partially also because I just love science in general, and partially because of BookTube influencing me, and like me realizing like I don't know that I really understood the breadth of science books that were out there, because before I was on BookTube, like my ability to find out about books was very narrow as compared to what it is today, like very much broader in scope in terms of what I find out about, and, you know, knowledge of what books are available out there and being published and all that sort of thing, and hearing other people talk about interesting books. And then, you know, now that I have some authors that I really love, you follow those people. And so it just kind of escalates and becomes a snowball effect of more and more and more. And now I'm really committed to reading books about sciences. And I really enjoy reading books in particular about science related to the ocean, because, you know, I'm just fascinated with it. And I mean, I don't think that, like, my fascination with marine sciences has not diminished by working in this field. It's only increased, and it just makes me want to know more. And of course, because I work with intertidal resources, like my area of interest in my work is like this little square. And then there's like all these other topics that everybody else is researching, you know, coral reefs and whales, and, you know, what's happening in other countries, and how is climate change impacting this, that, or the other thing. So like the topics and the themes that are out there to read about are just, they're endless, and they're endlessly fascinating to me. So that is the questions that related to my education and my work life. I hope that that answered your questions, all of you that asked those particular things. And I hope that, you know, that was of interest to you all, the other folks that didn't ask about those things. And like I said, I will be back with some more videos answering more questions in the near future. So stay tuned for those. I hope everybody's doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.